Nearly 6 months later, the rain is over. The weather clears. At last, the excavation of Temple 16 can be resumed. For another half year, workers continue to peel away the dirt from Rosalila. And just before the rains resume, the enigmatic temple yields one more surprise. From a small cache found in a doorway, Agurcia removes something buried 1,300 years ago.
Look, it's a black kind of a...
Oh, man.
It doesn't fit.
It's close enough.
You would not believe how sharp the edges on these things are.
What they have found is a bundle of blades chipped from an especially sacred material, flint, the firestone. They were probably used on ceremonial occasions, and the faces may depict royal ancestors or sacrificial victims. No one knows how long it took to create these delicately flaked blades, since no one today has the skill to make one. In all, 9 flints were found in Rosalila, perhaps corresponding to the 9 Maya lords of the night.
It's been here for 1,300 years, and it's unbelievable. It's a beautiful piece of art. I mean, the finesse, the work in it is incredible, and I just feel like incredibly privileged, you know. You get caught up in the heat of the battle, and you try not to forget to, take your pictures, take your measurements, and at times you forget to think about it, and to think the fact that it's human beings that did this a long time ago, and that when they did it, this was very important to them. I'm touched by it, I really am. And it's a special feeling. It doesn't happen every day.
It's likely that the flints Agurcia found in Rosalila were placed there sometime in the 7th century AD, when the classic Maya civilization was at its peak. In many Maya kingdoms, there was a boom in the construction of new buildings. Some cities were even connected by roads, and trade among them flourished. Copán lay on the southern frontier, but to the north, events had taken place in the Maya world that would eventually shake it to its core. Tikal was one of their greatest Maya cities, a prosperous urban center that was the envy of its neighbors. It was probably inconceivable to the kings of Tikal that any other kingdom posed a threat. But in the spring of 562, Caracol attacked Tikal and defeated it. During the upheaval that followed in Tikal, members of the royal family moved away into the jungle and established their own city. Today, a research base camp marks the spot. What was once the great city of Dos Pilas has again been reclaimed by the jungle. The effort to piece together a picture of its dramatic rise to power is being led by Arthur Demarest. What he has learned is changing the way we think about the Maya.
40 or 50 years ago, we thought of the Maya as this peace-loving, theocratic society, these scholarly kings who studied the movements of the planets and lived kind of in a world of their own. Now we know from the recent hieroglyphic decipherments and from excavations like these that have found fortifications that the Maya were very violent people, one of the most warlike peoples of the New World, and that they were constantly engaged in warfare, battles of dynastic succession, and earthly pursuits.
In 1990, Demarest's team discovered concrete evidence to support this view.
It is a large, perfectly preserved hieroglyphic text, and on it, it talks about a series of wars, battles, and conquests involving the big players, Tikal, Dos Pilas, battling each other, and it records the outcomes. It's a tremendous piece of information, and its decipherment, I think, is going to change the way we look at this very critical period in Maya history.
This is really amazing.
They're saying that he is the subordinate of this lord, presumably of Calakmul. It's a critical title.
That's bad.
That's
Here
amazing.
we were competitive with Tikal.
Well, we have to think about it. I mean,
Subordinate to
is it
Calakmul.
subordination or...
Alliance.
Epigraphers David Stewart and Steve Houston are called in to see how much of the text they can read.
in St. Louis?
Yeah,
Between
with references to
Bonampak and Tonyana.
And then after that,
X.
look, and there
It's
it is.
like Antun.
Yeah, this author refers to a kind of altar, and then
It-
here it
it's
refers to a
referring-
dedication.
It's referring to the stair. And look, it's a
There's
step.
a stairway.
It's a
That's
step.
the pyramid.
It's
Look.
an actual.
Okay, what it's saying is that this event, this war event,
And then over here you've got
a new event involving Rure's father. The skull glyph here is the name of the ruler of Tikal.
Initially, it seems that Maya warfare was, to some extent, ritualized. It was more devoted to religious ends. Literally, these guys dressed up in silly outfits, archaic costumes with big Paleolithic spears, and went out there and met in some place and knocked each other around. One of them was captured and brought back and sacrificed.
What the hieroglyphs on the stairway seem to confirm is that sometime in the 8th century AD, ritualized warfare gave way to campaigns of expansion. The kings of Dos Pilas attacked towns along the Pasion River and thereby seized control of a vital trade route.
It looks like there was a change in warfare that led to an intensification and to a shifting to warfare for conquest, actually absorbing the territory of others. This seems to have somehow gotten out of hand. An arms race, in a way, started. Attacking centers becomes acceptable, attacking population bases, burning temples, that kind of thing.
The new warfare would eventually come to Karakol as well.
The 8th century and 9th century at Karakol and throughout the Maya era was a time of tremendous change and a lot of warfare. Karakol, up to that point in time, had been very successful in warfare. What happens, we think at least, is that in this late time horizon, it's not just a question of defeating a neighboring civilization and taking them into your realm, but taking large numbers of captives to sacrifice. And I think people were really scared.
Picture yourself in a Maya city, and here you've been having warfare and you say, okay, I'm going to be captured, I'm going to be put to work, probably have to give 3 months out of the year to that foreign country over there. But rather than that happening to you, you've got this marauding army that comes in, pulls all the men together, and rather than marching them off to work into the fields, they instead cut off their heads and mount them on sticks and make huge skull platforms. Now that would strike terror into you. That would be enough to say, my God, let's get out of here.
Even Dos Pilas would finally face the terror. On the hieroglyphic stairway itself lie the ruins of a hastily erected stockade.
Archaeologically, this defensive wall is one of the most important and exciting features that we found here. One of the reasons why this masonry line is so neat and is placed so well is that it's made out of neatly carved blocks which were ripped off. They're the facings from the palaces around you. So they literally tore down the royal palace and built this, running it up against their hieroglyphic stairway to create this desperate defensive system.
A picture of the city in its final days begins to emerge. In a frantic attempt to keep the invaders out, the citizens of Dos Pilas erect 2 defensive walls around the center of the city and move inside for protection.
These are low house platforms that held little huts that filled the central ceremonial plaza here at Dos Pilas at the time of the siege and the collapse. And it indicates that, again, the desperation of those final moments of this great kingdom was so great and its fall had been so complete that at this point you had the population living within the ceremonial plaza, below the towering temples, below the monuments of the strutting great kings. It's almost as if you had a population squeezed in, living on the White House lawn, holding out at the very end of the collapse of American civilization. That's what you have here, that moment in time.